The protagonist agrees without hesitation. Meanwhile, Iblis, feeling embarrassed, lies down and nervously asks him to be extremely gentle with her. The scene shifts to the next morning. As Lily washes his face, he notices Iblis is in a foul mood. Curious, he asks why she was making such a fuss so early. This only fuels her frustration and she starts yelling at him. She's furious that even though it was their first night together, sharing the same bed, Lloyd just fell asleep the moment he lay down, without doing anything. Frustrated, she even questions his masculinity. The protagonist responds, saying he never expected they'd actually sleep together and couldn't really complain since the bed wasn't too cramped for both of them to fit. However, this only makes Iblis even angrier. Clearly, he was thinking about all the wrong things. She snaps at him, making it clear that the problem wasn't the bed, it was him. Iblis vents her frustration, saying she had gone through all the effort of dressing up, yet Lloyd did absolutely nothing. Realizing his mistake, the protagonist apologizes and asks her directly what she expected him to do, urging her to just say it outright. Iblis becomes flustered and starts speaking indirectly, hinting at what a husband and wife would normally do together, mating. Lloyd, however, gets caught up on the word she used, making Iblis even more embarrassed. Frustrated, she asks if he seriously doesn't know what it means. He assures her that he does, but casually adds that it's something that only happens when two people truly love each other. This prompts Lloyd to ask if Iblis loves him, catching her completely off guard. Flustered and embarrassed, she quickly dodges the question, insisting that such things are just human concerns. She claims she never knew love had to be involved for it to happen. Lloyd tells her that if it's truly what she wants, then as her husband, it's his duty to fulfill her wishes. Without hesitation, he casually adds that they could do it right away. This leaves Iblis completely stunned and embarrassed once again, so flustered that she quickly takes off and flies away. She declares that since her partner has chosen to be loyal to the dragons, she will in turn be loyal to human traditions when it comes to mating. That means they won't do anything until they truly fall in love with each other. Since Iblis is the one who set the rule, Lloyd simply goes along with it. Wanting to embrace her role, she then decides to go out and prepare some food, knowing that cooking is something a wife would typically do. That conversation makes the protagonist realize that being a husband might be even more challenging than facing the Demon King. There are so many steps and obstacles to overcome. Later, Iblis returns to the house, carrying something in her arms. Lloyd stares in confusion, unable to figure out exactly what she's brought. She explains that she brought her favorite mineral along with a chicken she found in the area, suggesting they could eat it for their meal. The protagonist takes a bite of the mineral, but quickly remarks that he can't sustain himself on it. This surprises Iblis, as she had no idea that humans don't eat minerals. So Iblis suggests that Lloyd eat the fresh chicken meat instead. However, he immediately points out that it's undercooked. Determined to make the meal suitable for her husband, she uses her fire powers to roast the meat, except she goes a little overboard, charring it completely until it's as black as coal. Proud of her work, she excitedly declares that now she'd be able to eat it without any problems. Lloyd takes a bite and nods, saying it actually tastes good now. Encouraged, Iblis decides to try it herself, only to immediately gag and complain that it tastes awful. But Lloyd insists that it's delicious not because of the flavor, but because she made it for him. Even though he can't eat the minerals she enjoys, he reassures her that anything she prepares for him will always taste great. Iblis feels embarrassed, wondering if Lloyd might just be too delicate. She starts to worry. Could she really let him eat something that tasted so awful? As his wife, her pride won't allow it. She silently resolves that she won't stop until she can cook something that truly satisfies him. Iblis then asks what was missing to make the food taste better. Lloyd replies that it needs salt, making her realize she completely forgot about seasoning. Learning that spices can be found in a town 2 days' drive away, she suddenly tells him to wait for a few minutes. She's heading out to get some salt right away. Lloyd reminds her that she needs money to buy things and asks if she even has any. Iblis hesitates, clearly unsure. Noticing her reaction, he presses further, asking if she's ever even bought anything before. Once again, she looks nervous, unable to answer. Finally, Iblis asks Lloyd to accompany her shopping. He agrees, mentioning that he also has something to take care of in town. Now that he's ready, they can head out together. However, just as he's about to leave, Iblis quickly stops him, her eyes fixed on the sword hanging at his waist. "You can't just walk into town like that," she exclaims, clearly concerned. The protagonist argues that carrying a weapon is necessary, that could be attacked by thieves on the way, so it's better to be cautious. However, Iblis simply sighs and shakes her head. "If that happens, your regular monster power alone would be more than enough," she replies, clearly exasperated by his over-the-top concern. Iblis points out that there's no need to worry, there wouldn't be any thieves daring to attack them, especially since they were traveling to the city while she was in her drawn form. With that settled, the couple sets off toward town to do some shopping. Eventually, the two arrive in Ion's town. As they approach, Port suggests they disembark somewhere out of sight, like near the forest, to avoid drawing attention from the townspeople. Once they make their way into the city, Iblis is immediately captivated by how much the human world has advanced. Her curiosity quickly turns into excitement when she spots the first butcher's shop. Without hesitation, she heads straight inside and grabs a piece of meat on display, eating it right then and there. The butcher, completely stunned, stares at her in shock before snapping out of it and demanding payment for the meat she just devoured. Lloyd quickly apologizes to the shop owner and pays for the meat Iblis ate, brushing it off by saying that his wife can be a little strange. Hearing this, Iblis is visibly shaken. Of all people, Lloyd was calling her strange. She couldn't believe it. After all, he was far weirder than she was. The MC then takes a moment to explain that in the human world, there are rules when it comes to buying things. She needs to pay first before taking anything. Realizing her mistake, Iblis immediately apologizes, admitting that she's never bought anything before. Lloyd, however, doesn't dwell on it and simply moves on. He suggests they focus on buying what they need, finishing the tasks he came to town for and heading home. Iblis suddenly becomes interested in taking a stroll through the city, and before long, the two find themselves inside a clothing shop. The moment she steps in, her eyes light up with delight. Knowing that her husband is always a bit too sensitive about things, she doesn't give him a choice. She grabs his arm and drags him along for some shopping. As Iblis eagerly browses through the clothing, a saleswoman appears almost instantly, ready to assist them. Iblis ignores the saleswoman and focuses on picking out clothes she finds pretty. Holding up a few options, she turns to Lloyd and asks which one he thinks would look good on her. However, Lloyd simply nods and agrees with everything she says, barely putting any thought into it. Noticing his lack of enthusiasm, Iblis starts to get annoyed. She glares at him and demands to know if he's even paying attention. After all, he's been giving the exact same reaction to every single outfit she's shown him. The MC insists that he was being sincere, but Iblis isn't convinced. Deciding to test his reaction, she picks out one of the garments and tries it on. Seeing this, the saleswoman eagerly jumps in, excited to show her even more options. However, Iblis quickly waves her off, politely refusing. She insists she doesn't need any more clothes. Lloyd is taken aback. Why wouldn't she want to buy anything after all that browsing? Iblis then explains that her clothes are made of energy, so she doesn't need to purchase any. She can simply memorize the designs and recreate them on her body whenever she wants. Lloyd raises an eyebrow and casually comments that it's surprising how miserly the Dragon Queen, the head of the dragon race, can be. Iblis immediately protests, insisting that she's not miserly, just economical. Without much hesitation, Lloyd simply nods in agreement, deciding not to push the matter further. With that settled, the couple continues strolling through the city, turning their errands into an impromptu date as they finish up their shopping. The two eventually stop at a nearby restaurant to eat, which makes Iblis both excited and anxious. She's eager to learn more about human cuisine. The moment she takes a bite of the roast chicken, her eyes widen in delight. The meat is perfectly roasted, packed with rich, well-balanced spices that enhance its flavor. She can't help but be impressed. As she savors the meal, she notices something surprising. Lloyd is also praising the food. Even though he always keeps the same expression while eating, it's clear he's genuinely enjoying it too. Iblis realizes that replicating this level of flavor would be a challenge. She wonders how humans manage to cook so perfectly and starts thinking about ways to learn. Just then, she overhears a couple at the next table playfully feeding each other. Intrigued, her eyes light up with excitement. Without hesitation, she decides to copy them. Turning to Lloyd with a mischievous grin, she picks up his fork and prepares to feed him herself. However, the MC doesn't get the point at all. With a straight face, he simply replies that he's perfectly fine eating on his own and doesn't need any help. Iblis freezes, clearly taken aback by his response. Meanwhile, Lloyd remains clueless, unable to understand why she's been acting so strangely throughout their time in town. A troubling thought creeps into Iblis' mind. Maybe she's expecting too much. What if Lloyd is actually bored of being around her? After all, their relationship is just a name only. There's no real connection between them. Lloyd looks at Iblis, sensing something is off. "Are you okay?" he asks. She quickly nods, brushing it off. "Yeah, I just feel a little tired." Before they can continue their conversation, a sudden outburst erupts from across the restaurant. A furious customer is shouting at the staff, angrily complaining about being served cheap wine. His frustration quickly escalates into violence. Without hesitation, he throws a punch at the employee before grabbing the man's wife. As the chaos unfolds, the enraged customer picks up the bottle of wine and hurls it straight at the employee's head, showing no concern for the consequences. The furious customer sneers and declares that he'll forgive the employee, but only if he hands over all his money and his wife. Of course, the employee refuses without hesitation. His defiance only fuels the customer's rage. Clenching his teeth, the man tightens his grip on the gun in his hand, raising it with a clear intent to strike. Before the situation escalates any further, Lloyd steps in, stopping the customer before he can commit an unforgivable act. The customer freezes in shock, staring at Lloyd in disbelief. "Why are you interfering?" he demands. Lloyd replies calmly, "Because I heard someone calling for help." And of course he couldn't just stand by, he had to step in to save whoever was in trouble. Gripping the client's gun so tightly, the protagonist starts to crush it with his bare hands, leaving the man in utter shock. Realizing the situation, the man quickly commands his men to go after Lloyd, who is clearly part of a gang of thugs. When Iblis senses that a fight is about to break out, she quickly reminds him to be careful not to accidentally destroy the restaurant. As the thugs hurl their blades at him, he effortlessly catches them as if they were nothing more than sheets of paper. Calmly, he states that guns are off limits. After all, they would cause too much damage to the shop. Lloyd effortlessly crushes the blades as if they were nothing, calmly reminding them that it's dangerous and they should drop it before anyone gets hurt. Within moments, the bandits collapse to the ground in shock, realizing the protagonist's sheer monstrous strength. The man, still holding the waitress hostage, warns Lloyd not to come any closer or he'll hurt her. But Lloyd doesn't hesitate. He doesn't care in the slightest. Without a second thought, he throws a powerful punch straight to the man's face, sending him flying out of the restaurant. The other customers watch in stunned silence, unable to believe what they just witnessed. With that, the protagonist confidently confirms that he completed his mission flawlessly, and not a single part of the restaurant was damaged. Seeing this, everyone around erupts in celebration, amazed by his incredible strength and effortless skill. Iblis gasps in shock. After all, Lloyd was her husband. But before she can process everything, a group of guards rushes in, reporting that soldiers have been spotted in the area. They quickly ask if everyone is safe. The protagonist calmly explains what happened before effortlessly handing over the defeated men to the soldiers as if they were nothing more than sacks of potatoes. The soldiers stare in shock. Lloyd had taken them all down single-handedly. Curious, they ask for his name to properly report the incident. With a composed expression, he answers, "Lloyd blanks." A stunned silence falls over the room. Everyone immediately recognizes the name, the very name of the one who defeated the Demon King. The soldiers could hardly contain their excitement. They practically worshipped the protagonist, thrilled to be standing before the great hero. As devoted fans, it was an honor just to be in his presence. But Lloyd remained unfazed. He wasn't interested in the admiration. Instead, he simply instructed them to deliver the mission report to the king, confirming that he had successfully completed the task involving the dragon. Just then, more and more people flood into the restaurant, eager to catch a glimpse of the great hero and join in the celebration. The excitement grows, and Iblis quickly suggests that they should leave. However, the protagonist points out that escaping won't be so easy. The entrance is completely packed with people, making it impossible for them to get out. The employees who had been saved quickly guide the protagonists out through the back door. Grateful for their help, Iblis pauses to check on them, asking if they're all right. One of the employees nods, explaining that he's used to dealing with situations like this. Even so, he still wants to express his gratitude for their help earlier. Lloyd advises the employee that next time they encounter thugs like that, they should avoid getting too involved. After all, he was clearly too weak and would only end up getting hurt. Hearing this, Iblis becomes frustrated, annoyed by the protagonist's cold and blunt choice of words. But the employee responds sincerely, explaining that he acted out of pure emotion. He was terrified that something might happen to his beloved wife, and that fear hurt far more than any physical wound ever could. Hearing this, the protagonist pauses, reflecting on his own words. But Iblis quickly insists that they should head back immediately, as they had already spent too much time there. However, before they leave, the employee's wife steps forward and offers them some food as a token of gratitude. At the end of the day, Iblis remarks on how much had happened, despite it only being the second day since she and Lloyd became husband and wife. As she reflects on everything, she realizes that the couple at the restaurant weren't just married in name. They genuinely cared for each other. That thought stirs a hint of jealousy within her. Suddenly, Lloyd casually pops a snack into Iblis' mouth, catching her off guard. She pauses, confused by his actions. Though the snack is undeniably delicious, the unexpected gesture leaves her puzzled. Lloyd, unfazed, simply explains that he did it on instinct. She had sighed and unknowingly opened her mouth, making it look like she was asking to be fed. Iblis is taken aback by Lloyd's sudden gesture, finding it hard to believe he would do something like that so casually. Lloyd, unfazed, simply shrugs and admits that he momentarily forgot they were only a couple in name. Still, he adds there's no harm in acting like a real couple every now and then. Iblis lets out a laugh, realizing how foolish she had been to worry. It wasn't just her. Lloyd, in his own way, was also making an effort to act like a real couple. After the protagonist fed her again, she thanked him, mentioning that the snack was delicious. Seeing this, Lloyd's expression softened, showing a rare moment of ease. Iblis said that now they could finally go home, and she was eager to start practicing how to cook properly. This time, she would rely on Lloyd's opinion to see if she was improving. And so little by little, the two of them began to grow closer, inching toward becoming a real couple.